Now, as you heard, stage 6 of power cuts may be a reality for us in South Africa this week. Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter says the power utility has suffered significant losses overnight, which has resulted in 10 generators breaking down. The country is currently experiencing stage 4 power cuts. De Ruyter says the current strike by employees is also a serious challenge. For more on this, let's talk to energy analyst Samson Mampweli, who joins us now virtually. Mr. Mampweli, thank you very much for your time here on All Angles. Now, it looks like we are probably a little step closer to a national blackout. What do you think?
Good afternoon, Maseko. Yes, it's not looking good at all. I've been following the briefing by Eskom as well. The strike itself came at the wrong time because it came at the time that the system was heavily constrained with more than 14,000 megawatts. That's not available due to a number of factors, but basically due to breakdowns. And that has added more than 3,000 megawatts onto the unavailability part of things. So it's quite difficult. And if you look at the coal fleet, for instance, it's not performing as it should. The energy availability factor, according to Eskom, is hovering around between 60 and 63%. That's very, very low. What I liked about the briefing is that they gave quite details in terms of the backlog in the maintenance and some of the other additional challenges that the public was not necessarily aware of. But we're moving towards a blackout. Remember, stage 6 is just one stage away from a total blackout. So if we move from stage 6 to stage 8, for instance, the next stage is total blackout. And once we get to that level, it's going to be very difficult for us to kind of awaken the entire system again. So we're sitting in a very, very difficult situation as things stand.
But how do you, Mr. Mampweli, rate the current executive at Eskom? I mean, this is, I think, the worst experience we've had in quite a while. The last time we had stage 6 load shedding was back in December of 2019. And now we're seeing this, and already, last month already, when they were still putting us through stage 2 load shedding for 5 hours every single day, they already said we are 6 days more compared to the same period last year. I'm sure right now it's skyrocketed to about 20 days more. How do you rate this current exec at Eskom?
When I look at the leadership of the current executive, Andre de Ruyter and his team, I have deep sympathy for them because they are basically grappling with historical negligence. If you look at what happened in some of the power stations, such as Tutuka, where some people had to be arrested because the system was not properly maintained and properly looked after, Kendall, Dover, and all that. So I have deep sympathy for them. What I like about them is the fact that they've identified the problem and they are working towards a solution. And the challenge has always been the lack of funding in terms of the maintenance program. The biggest question for me is whether we still need this coal fleet that has not been properly maintained, that is going to cost the country quite a lot of money in terms of maintenance, or whether we should look at fast-tracking a new generation capacity and getting rid of this fleet that is now giving problems. In my view, we should be looking at fast-tracking new generation capacity. We should be looking at bringing in other measures such as your demand-side management, so that we can kind of create visual power stations in the form of saving a lot of electricity from the grid, so that we ease the pressure on the grid itself. I don't think we need to be focusing more on solving some of these problems. We are at the stage where breakdowns happen, and it takes quite a long time for Eskom to detect what really happened. And when they actually find out what happened, they found that it's in some components that has now gone obsolete. Basically, you have a car that the manufacturer is no longer manufacturing the engine, and then your engine breaks down. What do you do under the circumstances? You need to replace the engine, and then it becomes very expensive to replace the engine as opposed to buying a new car. So that's why I'm saying we need to start looking at fast-tracking new generation capacity and bringing in additional measures that will ease the pressure on the grid.
Like those 18 companies that still need to sign their contracts with Eskom, of course, that would probably assist us a huge deal once they give that land to them to produce. But talking about some of the measures that Eskom has taken in desperate, in a desperate attempt to make sure that South Africa doesn't go through a national blackout, they also announced today during the briefing the amount of diesel that they've had to burn. Diesel is quite expensive at the moment. We all know what's been happening around the world in terms of the price of diesel and petrol, etc. And I think diesel has been increased more than petrol. So what does this mean, Mr. Mampweli, for taxpayers? Does that mean we're paying more? And once too much diesel has been burnt, doesn't that mean that we have to now use more taxpayers' money to get more diesel?
Yes. So basically what will happen is that at the end of the financial year, Eskom is going to post a loss, and when that happens, Eskom is going to have less revenue and less cash flow, which then means that the public will then have to bail Eskom out for lack of a better word. So Eskom may approach National Treasury and say, we can't continue with our operations unless we get this much amount of money. And then National Treasury will have to make money available. And that has happened in the past. And we know that Eskom is busy servicing a huge debt that came because of Medupi and Kusile and various other corruption and malfeasance aspects. And that debt it's largely being serviced by the public. You recall a few years back when National Treasury had to make a provision over a number of years for about 69 billion at some point that goes to Eskom for them to service the debt. So whatever happens at the power utility at the moment is going to have a long-term effect on the fiscus of the country. So and when that happens, even the rating agencies, when they start rating South Africa, they will look at Eskom as a big risk and they could downgrade us in the long term.
It's just going to cost us everything with this power utility, and clearly it just keeps failing in terms of these solutions. In the meantime, I guess, as you've seen here on eNCA, we have given you options there at home in terms of how you can keep your lights on. I remember my colleague Letiwe Mdluli speaking to people who created inverters for us to be able to keep our lights on, because while we wait for government to sort things out, this is our reality.